does Tommy and all of them people really have these values? Do they live by these values? Because I think not. Just
why do you think not? Why do you think not?
Based on how they treat other demographics, particularly refugees and asylum seekers.
Okay, and how's Tommy treated refugees and asylum seekers?
By encouraging people to say send them back. He demonizes them, and so do all of these protesters outside the hotels. They also have false beliefs about they're all coming from countries where it's okay to have sex when you're 8.
Sorry. Can I just? You've had a very good say there. You made your points very clearly. Yeah. Did you see the news last week about the 2 Afghan migrants that raped the 15-year-old girl in the park?
Yes.
Okay. Would she have been raped if they hadn't come in the country?
Probably
by those men. No, she wouldn't have been raped. So the other issue with this is, yes, absolutely, Jesus tells us to love our enemies. But how can you, as a state and as a society, love your enemies when your country's been degraded and destroyed by the left? I don't know what your political stance is, but by the left, by the Fabian Society, by people like Keir Starmer, and by the Tory governments who've systematically, since Margaret Thatcher, degraded everything about British industry. The coal mines were closed under Thatcher. You've got the Labour Party doing exactly the same thing with the Green agenda. So the migrants are one part of the bigger problem. The problem is we're being governed by people that hate us. The people that run our country hate the British people. The Labour leadership hates the British. Well, I haven't finished saying what I'm saying. The Labour Party hate the British people. You can tell by the way they behave. They've done nothing to stop the migrants' crisis. Can I just ask, do you own a house?
Why do you want to know that?
Well, it's just a question. I'll tell you, I own a house. Do you own a house?
Well, I'm not going to say.
Okay. Aspirationally, would you like to own a house?
Well, I'm not going to say.
Would you like to have a family?
I don't see my.
No, I tell you why these things are relevant. Would you like to own a house? And I don't know how old you are. Would you like to own a house and have a family?
Can I just
to that question? I want you to respond to that question. Would you like to own a house and have a family?
Well, I already do. There you go. That's good.
Okay, you already do. Okay. Now, a lot of younger people, I don't know how old you are, a lot of younger people cannot afford to get on the property ladder.
Yes.
And the reason they can't afford to get on the property ladder, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that rents and property prices are going through the roof because of the migrant crisis. Now, these people coming across... Sorry, let me finish. These people coming across on dinghies are not refugees. A very small number of them might be. But,
how do you know?
Well, that's the point, isn't it, my friend?
Hang on a minute.
No, hold on a minute. Let me finish. They're throwing their... No, they're throwing their passports over, but no, I'm making a very pertinent point, because that's what they do. They throw their passports over. They throw their passports...
Show me some evidence.
Yes, we have. Oh, listen. There's absolutely documented evidence.
Right, boys, please stop. Right, listen, I've got to referee this. Richard's putting a great point over. Ian has been brave enough to call in, so I want one at a time, please. I would really appreciate that, because I can't listen to two of you shouting at each other. Ian, do you want to respond to what Richard has said so far?
I'll
Because
respond to many of the points that I can remember. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I want to come in, because I want you to explain.
Yeah.
Because I think Richard is making some superb points that are absolutely correct. Right. But to be fair to you, I want you to answer them one at a time. So far away.
Okay. So going back to the migrant thing. So he brought up someone getting raped by a couple of them. Yes, that's true. And some of them have committed crimes. But this is an example of demonization, where all you do is pick out the bad stories with regards to asylum.
Where's the good ones, Ian? Where's the good ones?
Well, exactly. People don't want to paint positive stories about these people. They want to demonize them. Secondly,
what is your chance to give us a positive one? Give me a positive one.
Wait, then he went... Well, there's loads. I could give you one I read the other day where asylum seekers saved a woman on a beach who was sinking in the sand and the tide was coming in. She couldn't get out and they went over and saved her life. Anyway, that's just one, right? It's an old tactic, yeah, by the far right, that to demonize people and scapegoat them and make them the cause of all of our problems. Even him up there with the glasses, I've forgotten his name.
Richard.
Yeah.
Well, I've forgotten your name. You've got to be polite. You wouldn't be to get his name, would you?
No, let me finish. Yeah. And so he went on to say about the housing crisis. Yeah, it's caused by the migrants. He actually made the connection, and then he said they're not refugees. First of all, the majority of asylum seekers who land on these shores are granted asylum because
that doesn't mean they're refugees. That means they're gaming the system, Ian. They're gaming the system. I can respond to questions that you're saying. I can respond to questions that you're saying.
Let me get to the end and do what I did. Make a note of all these things, yeah, and I'll address them one by one. And so the majority, yeah, of people landing on these shores in dinghies are granted asylum. That means they have refugee status. That's the majority, not all of them, yeah? And so the rest of them are sent back or sent wherever, which is made more difficult, by the way, by Brexit because of the Northern Ireland, the Dublin agreements. Because of the Dublin agreements, we don't have the ability now to send them back to their first place of landing. Hang on, I'll get to the end.
You're doing exactly what I want to respond to that point. I want to respond to that point.
Hang on, I'll get to the end about the housing. The housing crisis is not caused by migrants. We all know, when you actually think about it, there's enough money in this country to build lots of houses for everyone, but the governments don't, and the private landlords own all the houses, and so they charge extortionate rents, and that's why it's hard to get on the property ladder, not because of the migrants. There's enough money to feed, clothe and house everyone in this country if we so chose to.
Richard?
Yeah, well, let's get back to there's two issues there. First of all, you mentioned the Northern Ireland Protocol. It wasn't the Dublin Agreement, it was the Northern Ireland Protocol, okay? The Northern Ireland Protocol was not part of Brexit. It was because the British government panicked because Leo Varadkar, the Irish PM, was making threats that the IRA would be resurgent and would start bombing London, Belfast, and other towns and cities in the United Kingdom. And the British government panicked, and that's why we got the Northern Ireland Protocol. The whole of the UK, including Northern Ireland, should have left the EU with Brexit. It was a complete pathetic reaction from Theresa May, followed up by Boris Johnson. So that's the first point. So that had nothing to do with Brexit. That had to do with the Tory government, the pathetic, weak Tory government, not actually implementing Brexit as it should have been. So that's the first point. The point on the asylum seekers, I think it's about 75% of these people are granted asylum or leave to remain. Most of them should not be granted asylum. They have gamed the system. They've got very smart lawyers, immigration lawyers who are doing this. And I want to also challenge the fact that you're accusing us of being far right. I have personally stood toe-to-toe with far-right thugs. Tommy Robinson has stood toe-to-toe. And I'm talking proper toe-to-toe, which you've probably never done. We've actually fought the far right, the real far right, the Nazis, the anti-Semites, the racists. So when you're making accusations against Tommy Robinson's movement, you don't know what you're talking about. I've known Tommy Robinson for 8 years. And if he was a racist, I wouldn't go within a million miles of him. There's not one racist person in our movement, in the leadership of our movement. They don't exist. Yes, there are racists out there, 100% there are racists out there. But saying that you don't want unregistered, unvetted, illegal migrants, and let's call them what they are, they're illegal. When they come to the country, you want to get legalistic about this and talk about asylum asylum been granted. When they come to the country, they're coming here illegally. And because the asylum system is overwhelmed, as you would have seen if you watched the amazing podcast that Alison Pearson did with Winston Marshall, these people have been granted asylum because the system is completely overwhelmed. Now, I hope... I'm going to ask you a question here, right? This is a very serious question. Do you know any women or girls who have been raped by the rape gangs, the grooming gangs, or by Muslim men? Do you know any?
No.
Well, there you go. And that's where unfortunately, you lose your moral authority. Because I've sat with these girls for hour after hour after hour doing interviews. Please don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. It is to do with asylum. Because it is to do with asylum, because a very large number of Muslim men who have come into this country as asylum seekers have been involved in the grooming gangs, and that's a documented fact. I'm not going to produce the evidence now because I'm away from my computer, but if it's on my computer, I would show you that documentary evidence.
Okay.
And what you're doing, you're either being disingenuous or you're not doing your research. That's the only two options we've got here, Ian.
Right, boys. Let me just stop you both for a minute, because I want to come in here now. You've both had a good shout. Ian, I want to say first of all, I appreciate you coming on and having a conversation. It's very difficult to have a conversation with the left because most of the time they won't engage.
Okay.
I have a question for you, and it is this. Do you not think that the safety of our children and our women is important? Do you not think that there's a problem? Can you not see what's going on in front of our very eyes here?
Of course it is, but I think you've got an inflated picture of these migrants, like there's a bigger number of them doing that than there actually is.
But the statistics tell us that, Ian, this is not us, right? The government's own statistics, that they're reluctant to give up and we don't even see the truth. Even those statistics tell us.
Can I just say, Afghan migrants are three times more likely to carry out a sexual assault than indigenous Brits.
There's
That's
no
a fact.
statistics that the government
there are statistics.
Show me them.
I am away from I've just told you, Ian, I am away from my computer. I will get the stats and I'll publish those stats next week.
Right. Hang on, I've done my research. Wait, the government do not keep statistics on crimes based on ethnicity and refugee status. They don't do it. They don't do it. If you claim these stats.
I'm answering it. These stats are coming. These stats are coming from a migration think tank. Okay, right. I will get the stats for you. But they're coming from a reputable migration think tank that's working with peer-reviewed documentation.
Right. Okay, well, I'd like to see it, because I keep hearing there's a stat for this, and it's all to do with connecting migrant and refugee status and where they come from with crimes. The government do not take those statistics. Let
me come in here, Paul. This is an important point. I'm going to give you a statistic. 2 Afghan migrants raped a 15-year-old girl, and it went to court last week. There's a stat for you. That's a fact.
Okay.
That little girl would not have been raped if your friends in the rubber dinghies hadn't come across the channel.
Yeah, but what you're doing is using an example of a terrible crime that couple of these people have committed to kind of generalize to the rest of them and want to send them all home. That's equivalent to saying we should ban cars because people get run over in them. Like, we know you.
Well, the government banned guns because one person ran around and did a stupid thing.
Well, that's what he's doing, and so I can see we should be Christians and accept people because we love them as other human beings under God and give them a helping hand. That's why they come here, because they know we're great like that.
Ian, which God is that?
Well, the Christian God. I don't
What
believe
about
in
what about
God.
what about the
Oh,
other?
you don't believe in God? Well, yeah, okay,
But
you don't believe. That's fair enough.
I hold
That's
all
fair
the
enough.
values that are considered Christian. And let me just get on to the point of me accusing you of being far right. Would you agree with this? Yeah. So, so somebody who promises, yeah, like Tommy, imagine he was a politician. Would you agree with this?
Tommy's not a politician.
Yeah, I know, but is this his position? That imagine he could promise national restoration in the face of humiliation by the immigrants, the leftists, the liberals, the minorities, the homosexuals, the women, in the face of what the leader says is a takeover
Ian,
of the country's media.
I'm going to stop.
Hang on.
I'm going to interrupt you there because let me, Paul, just mute him for a minute. So I want to respond to him. No, because you're talking rubbish. Okay, let me tell you something, right? Tommy Robinson is not a homophobe. Tommy Robinson is not a racist. Okay, Tommy Robinson does not discriminate against people because they're women. Tommy Robinson is none of the things that you're claiming he is. Tommy Robinson has examined the doctrines of Islam and has a very real issue with the doctrines of Islam if they are practiced under Sharia law, or if they're practiced to the extent that young girls are getting groomed and raped by gangs that are 90% Muslim. That's what Tommy Robinson's about. He is not going after people because of their skin colour. Okay?
Ian, you can come back now, mate.
Right, okay, so just to finish the sentence, and so...
You're not listening, are you? You're not
Yes,
listening.
I'll get to that.
Richard,
yeah,
Richard,
you keep interrupting me halfway, then expect me to answer you fully. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, if a leader's saying, yeah, this country is under attack, the media, the cultural institutions and schools, by all those forces, the leftists, the liberals, the immigrants, all of that, do you kind of go along with that?
No,
this
because
country was once great.
I've just told you that Tommy Robinson is not against multiculturalism. He said that very, very clearly. Tommy Robinson is on record as saying multiculturalism hasn't failed. What the failure is the importation of millions of people from a religion and a demographic and a culture that is 100% diametrically opposed to British values and culture. Now we could get onto the evils of the left, and we could look at communism and look at the graves that communists have filled in the last 150 years, and we could do that all night, because as much as I hate fascists and Nazis, and I hate them. As much as I hate fascists and Nazis, I'll rephrase that. As much as I hate fascism and Nazism, I also hate communism and socialism, because they are different cheeks of the same arse. And the reality is, pardon?
Are they coming for your children, these forces?
No, but actually that's what the Muslim grooming gangs have done. Do you know how Anne Cryer is a Labour MP or a retired Labour MP? Do you know how many girls she estimated were raped and abused by the grooming gangs? She was a Labour MP in Bradford. Do you know how many young girls, underage girls, she believed the grooming gangs have raped? Do you know?
I don't know what she believed.
Well, here's another stat that you don't know. 1 million girls. That's what Anne Cryer said.
Well, she might say that, but there's no evidence for 1 million, is there?
Well, actually, if you did the research that we done, you'd find there is a lot of evidence that circumstantial evidence that there could be. Okay, there was 1,200. There was 1,200. Sorry, no, hold on. There was 1,200 girls raped. No, I'm not. There was 1,200 girls raped in Telford. 1,200.
Right, boys, 1 minute. I'm going to come in now, so I've got to silence you both for just a second. Ian, I want to ask you something before we go. Are you there? Sorry,
yeah.
Ian. Yeah, are you there? Okay, I want to ask you something, right? I'm happy to sit here as a referee and watch you guys hammer it all out, but I'm going to come in when I want to come in, and I'm going to ask you a question. Do you honestly think, with your hand on your heart, now you said you're a family man, I take it you've probably got kids. I'm not going to ask you if you have, but I think you said you had. I'm going to ask you a question now, and I want you to answer this from the bottom of your heart, right? The people that you are protecting tonight and that you are standing up for, when the time comes, do you think they're going to show you, your family and your daughters the same compassion that you are showing them?
Well, I haven't met a single Muslim who believes that it's okay to do things with little girls or other.
No, well, do you know what, Ian? Do you know what, Ian?
I've never met a Muslim
Neither have I.
who
Ian.
love and compassion. Hang on, second.
I met them.
I ain't met a single Muslim in
Go
this
Speaker's
world
Corner.
who ain't just a nice person and goes by our laws and
Ian,
thinks it's a fight.
Ian, I want to say to you this, right, is that, yes, I haven't met any Muslims. I haven't met anyone. I've never met a white guy that's come up to me and said, oh, I'm a nonce.
Well, exactly.
Right, but what? You've only got to look at the evidence. You keep asking for evidence. The
There's
evidence.
only a small
Ian,
amount of evidence.
Hold on. You're not. It's not a small. Ian, you're not answering my question.
Right.
Do you think that these people will show you? Do you think radical Islam will show you and your family and your daughters the same compassion that you're displaying on
Well,
the
you're
internet?
conflating moderate Muslims.
Okay.
And no, don't butt in again. You're conflating.
I'll put in when I want
the
to, fella.
Right, you're conflating the two, right? Normal, everyday Muslims who you encounter every day and radical Islam. There's radical Christianity.
Yes, I agree. Here's the problem.
Right, let me in here.
Hang on, any extremism is bad, yeah? And so I just wanted to mention the thing about Tommy when he goes up to these places about the grooming gangs. If he really had children's interests at heart, he wouldn't only say, look, it's only the Pakistanis. He would bring up everything, all the
But you know why?
Right,
You know
okay.
why,
I am
you know
going
why?
to, Paul, I'm going to come in here because I have to come in here, okay? Let me come in.
Please deal with those. Go on.
Paul, let me come in here. Let me come in here. Paul, please let me come in here, right? Because I've got something to say. It's very important. This guy's not letting anyone talk. He's not listening. Are you listening?
No,
Okay.
Richard,
Okay.
you're both as bad as one another.
Well, no, actually, because I'm telling the truth, he's lying. Now, here's the thing. Right? When you talk, let this guy talk. He's been sitting there very, very quietly, and he hasn't got
I
one.
love your shows, bro. All right.
Craig, your mic. Craig, by the way, the reason you haven't been able to speak is your mic has been muted, your end, my friend.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, but now I can hear you.
All right. Thank you. Right. Oh, bollocks. Oh, well done. Right, Richard, I love your show, brother. I've not watched half of them. The guy to the next to me is Henry. I've been on shows with him before. Paul, you're a brilliant guy. Don't even listen to this flaming plankers come on. All right?
Exactly.
He likes to hear his own bloody voice. He's an absolute idiot. Everyone's had enough of him. If you've seen the chat, people are telling you to get him off. Because he's absolutely blank.
And he's lying.
Everyone hates him. Everyone actually hates him.
Well,
Yeah?
I would just like to say
Shut up, Henry.
my position is the mainstream position.
Henry,
in
you're a
society,
lefty
by the
troll.
way.
Shut up.
Yeah. He's a lefty. Let me just. But I do want to answer some of his points because it's valid that we answer his points. He talked about moderate Islam. Okay. Well, I would like. I've done extensive research into Islam in the UK. 45% of the mosques in the UK are run by Deobandi clerics. Now, if you don't know what Deobandi clerics are, Ian, sorry, what's this guy's name? Henry, is it?
Henry.
This little guy in the corner, Henry.
Henry.
If you don't know what Henry, it's called Henry. Okay. If you don't know what Deobandi clerics are, go and look it up. 7% or 8% are run by Salafis and another 2% by other extremist clerics. So over 50% are run by extremist clerics. That sounds terrible. 75% of the Muslims in the UK are Barelvi. Now, Barelvi Islam was thought at one point to be a very, very moderate form of Islam. Okay? What we're finding now is that they have a fanatical love for Muhammad. Let me tell you something about Muhammad. Muhammad married Aisha. Now, this isn't me making this up. This isn't right-wing trolling. This is a fact in the hadiths, the authoritative hadiths, in other words, the Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Islam, the authoritative hadiths claim that Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 years old, and he consummated the marriage. In other words, raped her when she was 9 years old. You got a Speaker's Corner. Not one Muslim apologist will deny that. They just try to justify it by saying, oh, she was a very well-developed 9-year-old who had reached puberty. Then you wonder why 80% of the men that are involved in the grooming gangs in the UK are Pakistani Muslims, also a few Bangladeshis and Somalis thrown in there. That's why. Now, I'm not going to be lectured by someone who doesn't know the facts of the case and is just coming on with his hope not hate leaflet in front of him and spewing all the nonsense, who's never spoken to any of the victims of sexual abuse and rape, and slandering Tommy, who sat with these women for hours like I did and interviewed them and talked to them and sat and wept with them when we heard of the abhorrent things that they saw. Let me just tell you about one of those women that I spoke to, Henry. She was trying to escape the grooming gang. She was about 14 years old. She was kidnapped. She was kidnapped by the grooming gang. They took her to a cafe in Telford. They took her in the back of the cafe, opened a chest freezer. In the chest freezer was the body of a little white girl. Okay? She panicked and didn't leave the grooming gang because she was terrified that was going to happen to her. So don't come and lecture me that you've met loads of nice Muslims. I get my hair cut by a nice Muslim once a month. He's a perfectly nice gentleman. I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that he's a rapist or a groomer, but the reality is the predominance of it in those communities is a threat to national security. It's a threat to our stability. It's a threat to community cohesion. And you, my friend, are facilitating it. I'm not going to interact with this guy anymore. In fact, I'm about out of here, but it's just beyond belief that people are still believing this nonsense, especially when even the British government are admitting that the vast majority of grooming gangs are Pakistani Muslims.
Right.